In the last video, we looked at the three ways how we can set flex spaces. We said that we can set specific pixel values, relative percentage values, and the auto value. Now, so far, our flex spaces in our whole Flexbox system, for that matter, is kind of the same thing as just setting some size in percentage or in depending on its content values, because when those elements have the space that they want to, that they need to, this is just behaving like a normal size, and we never have some interesting challenge actually. And that's not what Flexbox is made for. Flexbox is actually made for the case when you don't have enough space and when you have to compete for space and when you have to distribute the space over several elements. So let's look at just that in this second example here. Now, what we have here are two elements with a flex basis of auto, the red one and the yellow one, and we have a third one that has a fixed pixel size. Now, as you can see here, you can use auto not only for text, obviously, but also for other elements. Here we just put in some equal sized squares, and obviously when there's enough space, the yellow element just gets as big as it needs to fit in those three elements. Now, let's start to grow these elements a little bit. Let's get some more text in here. Sorry. Okay. And let's get more elements in here. And so far we still have just the same behavior we had before. All of those elements can fit their content inside without any problem. This element can be as big as it wants to be, and everybody is happy. Now, this starts to change now. What you can see, what's happening here is those elements are suddenly no squares anymore. And that's happening because the yellow element is telling them, listen, I'm having space troubles. You cannot take up as much space as you want to. And when I do this even more, I think I did one thing that I did not intend to. Yeah, I made one mistake. I wanted to have the default shrink value of 1 for the red element as well. Now you can see, let's just repeat that quickly. Let's remove a couple of those. You can see that the red box is also changing, obviously, and also the text is changing. However, for normal visual elements, the yellow element can kind of tell them to become smaller. For a text element, a little bit something else is happening. Now, the text element has less width to use, but the font or something, other properties of the text, they don't change. So you always have the same font. You don't want your font to change based on some other elements changing. But the element as a whole is still getting smaller because it doesn't have enough space. So you might ask the question, now, what size are they actually having and why are they having exactly this size? And now this is actually the kind of the core of the flex spaces thing, and also the core of Flexbox in a sense, that Flexbox is calculating this flex spaces for all of those elements once they cannot have the space that they want to have. And we can see by this middle element that there are definitely two kind of criteria that are considered for this calculation. One thing is how many content elements, or how big our content actually is. But if this was the only thing that we would consider, then we would still have square elements and they would still be as big as they want to be. You can see that when you remove the shrink. I'm sorry, not on the item, but on the container. So if the shrink is set to 0, it's not considering the other elements, it's only considering its content elements. And now we are kind of back in the same scenario where we were before, where those elements just take up as much space as they need. But that's not the default case, and that's not what you normally tend to do. What you normally tend to do is to let Flexbox figure out how much space those elements can have. And for that, it is for once considering the content, and the other thing that is considering is the other elements around me in my container. So this is the reason why those elements have the sizes that they have. What size that precisely is, you don't really know that. You just know that this element will calculate something based on its content. The more content it has, the more weight this element kind of has. The same thing goes for this. We can easily test that by removing those elements. No, that's not what I wanted to do. By removing some of those elements, and with each element that we remove, the yellow element kind of has less weight, and for that it is allowed to take up less space in the container. And the same thing is happening when we set a different flex basis, a specific flex basis, obviously. When we set this to 50 pixels, now the other elements are allowed to use up more space. And so we always have this game of Flexbox kind of figuring out what is the weight of the particular elements and how much space based on that weight are they allowed to take up. And this weight is kind of represented in this flex basis value.